welcome back to another episode of the NSP Sports Podcast here on YouTube. I am Scott DeBell. With me today is Nick Federico. How you doing today?
What's going on, guys? It's been a while.
That's for sure. That is definitely for sure.
Time.
Pat isn't with us today, but that's not going to stop us from podcasting on. So a lot has happened since we've last uploaded to YouTube. You know, an entire NFL season has come and passed. March Madness is upon us. So that's what we're going to start off today's show talking about. Crazy first two rounds of the NCAA basketball men's tournament. We see the first one seed go down in Virginia losing to UMBC, and it wasn't even close, lost by 20. Then you see some other upsets. Buffalo just obliterating Arizona, beating them by 21 points, 89-68. What were your takeaways from the first and second rounds of the tournament?
First and second rounds, definitely bracket busting, most definitely. Personally in a couple of my brackets, of course, I had Virginia winning in the 1 seed, and just them losing in the first round especially to a 16 seed by UMBC. Just didn't see that coming whatsoever. But other than that, it's been a pretty exciting tournament, to say the least. It's probably one of the better ones I've seen in a couple years.
Yeah, that's for sure, and definitely one of the craziest first weekends we've seen, just with Michigan's shot to beat Houston, Loyola Chicago shot to beat Miami. It hasn't been short of buzzer beaters. There's been a couple big ones. Syracuse coming out of the first four, making the Sweet 16 in a matchup with Duke, but we'll get to that matchup a little later. Let's go on and predict some of these Sweet 16 games. First, we'll start off. Let's talk about Kentucky, because say Loyola Chicago beats Nevada, they won't have to play a seed higher than a 9 to make the Final Four.
Yeah, I think in a lot of my other brackets I did, I had Kentucky at least making the Final Four. I mean, John Calipari coach team is hard to beat every single year. They come and compete, and they usually make a couple good runs. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Kentucky's got Kansas State coming up. I don't think really Kansas State's, they're a good team, but they're not that good enough to beat Kentucky and a John Calipari team.
Yeah, and even if Nevada wins, the highest seed they'll have to play is a 7 to make it to the Final Four, which is pretty unprecedented. You won't see that every day. But let's start off Kansas State, Kentucky. That is a matchup that's going on tonight, Thursday, when we're recording this. I just don't see how Kentucky doesn't pull through. They have probably, other than Duke, the most talented team in the country still standing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The freshman talent they have is nuts. You have guys like Knox, Diallo. If they're on, they're on, and they could be very tough to beat, especially for a Kansas State team that, UMBC came off a huge win against Virginia. They showed that they can beat the so-called best team in the country and the number 1 overall seed. But they didn't surprise me, or they didn't shock me very much against UMBC. They only put up 50 points. I see Kentucky winning this one pretty big.
Yeah, I agree. Kentucky's just, they're too much for Kansas State to handle. And so let's move on. Let's go to Loyola Chicago, the 11 seed, the Cinderella in this one, against Nevada.
Yeah, I mean, Loyola Chicago's beaten two good teams to get here, beating Miami by 2, then Tennessee by 1. Sister Jean is on their side, that is for
Absolutely.
sure. Sister Jean.
That's for sure.
Nevada, they looked pretty good against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's one of the best teams one of the best defensive teams in the tournament, probably behind Virginia. And Nevada came back from 22 points down in the second half. So
they came back from a bunch.
Yeah, they show that they can score in bunches and make a big run when they need to. I think the Cinderella story is going to end here. I think Nevada's going to move on here to the Elite Eight to face Kentucky.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Scott. Nevada's on a run right now, especially off the momentum beating Cincinnati. It's, I think once you gain momentum in this tournament, it just keeps on going. But unfortunately for Loyola Chicago, this is where their story is going to end.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to the West bracket here, last two games of Thursday night. We'll start off with a pretty surprising matchup. I don't know if anyone really saw this one coming, but Florida State and Gonzaga, 9 seed versus a 4 seed out in LA. Gonzaga, I had going far in my bracket. I thought that their experience, and not a lot of people talk about them coming out of the West Coast Conference. They just kind of do their business during the season. Then when it comes tournament time, Mark Few, their head coach, always has them playing their best basketball of the year. Florida State looked very good against Xavier. They could definitely make some noise here in this tournament, especially coming out of the ACC, which is a perennially strong conference. But I think Gonzaga is going to come out of this one. I think their experience being in the title game last year, it's going to be a close game, but I think Gonzaga is going to pull it out in the end.
Have to agree again. I think Florida State is another one of those teams that, obviously nobody saw coming, but they beat a very good Xavier team by 5 points, and especially, they're a 1 seed, and Xavier, even though coming out of the Big East, Big East wasn't too deep, to say the least. They had Xavier and then Villanova as well, but, I think Gonzaga, they're another team. They're another team up there, like with Kansas and Michigan State, teams that are always there. But Gonzaga's just a little bit below that. But I have the Zags pulling it out anyway.
All right, let's move on to Texas A&M and Michigan. I have a feeling I know where you're going to go with this one. I'll let you start off this matchup.
I just have to say, Michigan had no business being on the court with Houston last week. But somehow they just pulled it out of their butt. Jordan Poole with a game-winning shot was something else, definitely something else. I didn't expect Michigan to win this game, but that's what March Madness is all about. I think for Michigan to compete with Texas A&M, because they are a tough team, Mo Wagner's got to start getting more touches for this Michigan Wolverines team. He's the centerpiece of this team, and for them to be successful and keep moving on against tougher competition in this tournament, he's got to get more touches, in my opinion.
Who do you have winning the game tonight between them and Texas A&M?
Go Blue, baby!
So you're taking the Wolverines to move on to the Elite Eight.
Got to take the Wolverines.
See, this is the first one we're gonna disagree. I'm gonna take Texas A&M. The two guys down low just look so dominant, and you talk about Wagner. He hasn't really done much in the tournament so far, and he's really their big guy that they go to. Texas A&M has two of them, and people forget that they were a top 15 team in the country in the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of went under the radar in SEC play, having some bad losses. But against UNC, they really showed that they can play with anyone in the country. And I think Texas A&M is going to move out of this West bracket and play in the West Regional Final.
Understandable. Texas A&M's a good. They're not a bad team whatsoever. They're a very competitive team. Michigan's defense, though, they've been good enough, in my opinion, to they really held Houston in some points in the game, but I feel like Michigan can just get it done. I feel like they are now a better team with all these upsets. They're a better team in this tournament, and I just think it's another team that's got momentum going forward off that game-winning shot. You'd be surprised how many teams get momentum and get all hyped after a win like that. So I got the Wolverines. There was no doubt me picking the Wolverines. So gotta go with the blue.
All right, let's move on to Friday night's games. We'll start out in the East region. A game that I wanted to see happen since the bracket came out in Villanova and West Virginia. West Virginia, very experienced team. You have Carter, the guard, and they have another senior guard, too, that they have the experience. Then you have guys like Villanova. I think Brunson was named first-team All-American today. It was either Bridges or Brunson. They were both. One was first-team, one was third-team All-American. So they have a lot of talent on that team. Phil Booth coming off injury. He was hurt for a majority of the year with a thumb injury, I believe. That being said, I do think Villanova has enough to win against West Virginia. West Virginia has been very up and down this year. They've had some very good wins in the beginning of the year, then losing to Kentucky at home when they were kind of in a low of their season. It's definitely going to be a good game, a close game. I think West Virginia's experience will definitely have a factor in the game, but I think Villanova will pull it out.
Sound the sirens, because Villanova's on upset alert.
You think the Wildcats are going down?
Wildcats are going down in the Sweet 16. A Bob Huggins coach team. They come to play every single time. I just have a feeling about West Virginia. The experience, as you said, is a key factor sometimes in this tournament. I got to take the Mountaineers.
All right, I definitely could see them winning this game. They got a good down low presence. Definitely, as I mentioned, the experienced guards. They could definitely pull an upset here. Experience really counts in the tournament, especially when you have a team of Villanova's not like Duke where they have a bunch of one and dones, but still they're not as experienced as West Virginia. All right, let's move into the nightcap in the East region. We'll go to Purdue and Texas Tech. Now this is an interesting matchup just because Purdue doesn't have Isaac Haas anymore. It's pretty much guaranteed he's not going to play, as the NCAA did not let him play with his elbow padding or brace after he fractured his elbow in the first round game. Texas Tech coming off a win against Florida where they were down for a majority of the game and took a little run at the end to defeat the Gators. This is going to be a close game, I think. It's going to matter on whether the other kid down low for Purdue can step up in place of Haas.
I agree. But I do have Texas Tech winning this one. You look at Purdue's last two games, I mean, against, in the first round against CSUF, no competition really there for the Boilermakers. But they did beat a good Butler team in the second round, 76-73 by 3 points. I think Texas Tech, though, they've had a good run. I can't really pick a guy. I really can't pick Purdue because of, the Big Ten. But I'm gonna go with Texas Tech just because I feel like they're the better team.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Purdue on this one. I think that they have just enough to get past the Red Raiders of Texas Tech.
Okay.
All right, let's move into the last two matchups of the Sweet 16 in the Midwest region out in Omaha, Nebraska. We'll start out with three ACC teams actually in the Sweet 16 of this region. Let's start out in the first game in that region on Friday night. The Kansas Jayhawks and the Clemson Tigers.
This game is an interesting one. It's just interesting because, you have Kansas. They're always there every single year. But Clemson's one of those teams that are just a pain in the butt this year, It's got a potential to be the game of the weekend, in my opinion, but I think at the end it's just going to be Kansas that's going to take it.
Yeah. See, Kansas scares me. I don't know why. They don't jump out at me as a team that's going to be an impact team that's going to make a run. They just seem that they could be very vulnerable at some points. They don't have that one go-to player. They have the big guy down low, that Angel Delgado from Seton Hall, just torched for like 25 points, 24 rebounds. Clemson's never been really the same since Dante Grantham went down. That was their go-to player for majority of the year. Clemson was one of the best teams in the ACC. I think they were leading the ACC at one point, and then he went down for the season. Clemson's definitely going to be able to hang around in this game. I think it's going to come down to down low again. If Kansas can handle the presence down low of Clemson, but I think Kansas is just gonna pull this one out. That it's in Nebraska. Kansas fans always travel well, and I think it's going to be a home court advantage, even though it's out of neutral court. I'm going to take the Jayhawks to move on to the Elite Eight.
All right, and that's our predictions for the Sweet 16 this weekend.
Wait, we have one more game. We have one more game.
Oh, we do? We do?
We do. We have.
Which one?
You can't forget about the Dukies.
Oh, yes.
Midwest region nightcap of the Sweet 16 out in Nebraska. The Syracuse Orange, one of the surprise teams moving on to the Sweet 16 against the Duke Blue Devils and Coach K.
Go ahead, Scott.
See, teams have had problems with Syracuse 2-3 zone. TCU had problems. Michigan State couldn't hit a shot. They couldn't hit water if they were in a boat. Syracuse's 2-3 zone just does that to teams, but Duke sees it twice a year in ACC play, And Duke also runs a 2-3 zone, and Coach K has gotten a lot of his 2-3 zone tendencies and his strategies from Jim Boeheim, working with him in USA basketball. So Duke's going to know how to attack it. They're going to be able to knock down shots. Grayson Allen can go cold at some points, but in the tournament, I think he'll be able to turn it on. You have Bagley down low, Wendell Carter Jr. Duval can hit some shots. He showed that in the first round game against Iona. I just think Duke is going to have way too much for Syracuse. I don't think this game's going to be close.
Like you said, the tendencies of the zone defense for Syracuse, and Duke is familiar with it. Coach K is familiar with it. I just think Duke is they got too much star power. They got Grayson Allen, Marvin Bagley, and those guys up there in Durham. I think Duke's not going to run away with the game. Obviously, a Syracuse team coached by Jim Boeheim is always going to be in it, but I got the Blue Devils moving on.
Alrighty, well, there's our picks for the Sweet 16. We're going to take a quick break here on the NSP Sports Podcast. When we get back, we're going to touch on some NFL free agency as that happened in the past week. So don't go anywhere. Stick right here to the NSP Sports Podcast here on YouTube. You're listening to the NSP Sports Podcast here on YouTube.
Welcome back to the NSP Sports Podcast, everybody. Just remember that we are on Twitter at NSP Sports Pod, and follow us on our personal accounts. They are there in the description atop. Right now, we're going to start with the NFL free agency. Scott, what is your take on this year in NFL free agency, trades, anything in general?
All right, well, I feel like it would be hard to not start out with our beloved New York Jets.
Oh, of course.
But I feel like we got to start out with Kirk Cousins just because he was the big name in NFL free agency this year. Obviously, the Jets were tied to him for a long time. But he chooses to go to Minnesota, play for the Vikings, which, to be honest, I can't blame him for. They're more ready to win at this time. Obviously, they went to the NFC Championship game last year. But personally, how much of an upgrade is he over Case Keenum? Like, Case Keenum and Kirk Cousins probably could have made the throw to Stephon Diggs there in the divisional round against the Saints. I think Kirk Cousins is better than Case Keenum, but I just don't know how much of an impact he's going to have on this team.
I agree. I don't think it's a significant upgrade. I mean, when you say the names Kirk Cousins, and Case Keenum, you automatically think Kirk Cousins is better. I mean, Kirk Cousins, he's talented. Played well for the Washington Redskins, but for some reason the Redskins didn't want him back. But I feel like even though he was tied to the Jets, I feel that Cousins made the right choice. He said he wanted to go to a winning culture, and that's what he did to go to Minnesota. So I think for his career and for the purpose of winning a Super Bowl, or at least being in contention for one, that Minnesota was the right choice for him.
Yeah, definitely. And the Jets did offer him more money, but obviously people consider the tax and everything. Minnesota's they were probably about the same offer. So let's move on to the people that actually signed for the New York Jets. We'll start out with arguably the best corner on the market this year in Tremaine Johnson coming over from the Rams to the Jets, and that's a huge signing for the Jets in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. It's huge because they need that guy. They need that one guy. They haven't had that big cover corner since Revis and Cromartie. The guys on the back end right now, Buster Screen, Darryl Roberts, Justin Burris, those guys aren't getting it done. So the Jets needed to make a move. They needed to beef up that secondary along with Jamal Adams and Marcus May. It's just something they had to do. They did pay him. They're paying him $15 million a year. But if you think that's worth it for a cover corner, then I'm all for it.
See, my take is I love the signing. I think it's going to be great for the Jets secondary, especially for Jamal and Marcus learning under a veteran like that. Yes, they play different positions, but he'll be able to work closely with both the young guys there. But I still think the Jets have a huge need for pass rusher. I just don't see how Leo is going to be able to do it all himself.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with Mo Wilkerson being let go, even though that's just something the Jets had to do because of the laziness issue and the lateness issue, and he just seems like he didn't deserve the money that he was getting. But you're right. The Jets do need another pass rusher. Leonard Williams can't do it by himself, but it remains to be seen. Free agency isn't over, and we have the draft coming up. But we'll see what happens.
Let's move on to another free agent signing. Avery Williamson coming over from the Titans. Now I don't know too much about him coming from there, but
yeah, me either.
A lot of people said he was the best inside linebacker guy that was out there in free agency, and the Jets got him replacing Demario Davis. I was kind of upset to see Demario go just because he was a great locker room guy, led the Jets in tackles last year with over 200, I believe. Coming back to the Jets after he was traded to the Browns for a season or two. He really played well for the Jets defense, and they kind of got their swagger back, if you want to put it that way, towards the middle end of the season.
Yeah, and DeMario was a big part of that during the season. As you said, he led the team in tackles. But the Jets had to get a little younger, I believe. And Avery Williamson, not knowing much about him, he seems like a very exuberant guy and has a lot of passion. And we're glad to have him here. But Demario Davis was it's unfortunate to see him go after only being here for one season before he was in Cleveland. But it's just it's a part of the building process, of getting younger for the Jets, and I feel like it's a move that had to be made to some extent just to get younger. But DeMario will be missed, but he's going to a Saints team that is in need of defense, and he will contribute there.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to Spencer Long, center, coming from the Redskins. Jets needed much-needed offensive line help after Wesley Johnson was awful at the center position, taking over for Nick Mangold the season after he retired. It's a good signing, in my opinion. The Jets needed offensive line help, especially after the guys like James Carpenter, Bruno Giacomini, Brett Quale, I think, is still out there on free agency. The Jets' offensive line is average at best, and any guy that you can add to that to make it better is a much-needed signing, in my opinion.
Yeah, without an offensive line, you have nothing, in my opinion. And the Jets did upgrade from Wesley Johnson last year, but I think all around they need help on the offensive line. James Carpenter had a really down year, as well as Brian Winters. But I think moving forward, Spencer Long will be a better option. Unfortunately, Wesley Johnson couldn't get it done. It's a decent signing. I don't know too much about Spencer Long, but I guess he can do the job. We'll see. It remains to be seen.
All right, you can't talk about free agent signings for the Jets without talking about the quarterback position, as we did a little bit before with Kirk Cousins, a guy they missed out on. But bringing back Josh McCown is, I think, even though they said that he's going to be the starter as of right now, he's more there as a coach kind of guy, and I'd love to see him, after he's done playing, be the Jets quarterback coach. I feel like he really loves the organization, even though he's only been here for 1 year. The fans love the guy. He just shows his passion, and he wears his heart on his sleeve whenever he goes out to play. And then adding Teddy Bridgewater, both on 1-year contracts. I really like this move. Even coming in before the season, I said that Teddy Bridgewater needed to be a guy that the Jets targeted coming in for their quarterback position. I think that he's going to have a point to prove coming off a knee injury that did not allow him to play the past 2 seasons. He did get a snap or two in this season, but I think that this is a really good signing for the Jets and much-needed quarterback competition going into training camp, especially for the rookie quarterback that they're most likely going to draft. Yeah,
bringing back Josh McCown, I think it was great. We met him at training camp. We got to, said a few words to him. He's a nice guy. As you said, wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's a great leader. He brings veteran leadership, and we're happy to have him back, in my opinion. Teddy Bridgewater is an interesting thing, because I learned about his contract situation earlier in the week, and if the Jets do decide to draft a quarterback, which we will talk about later in our mock draft, it's really a tryout to start, and training camp comes around for Teddy Bridgewater, that if the Jets don't feel like he made the cut, the Jets can cut him by only risking, I think, about $500,000 having to pay him. But if they sign him throughout the season, then he's going to get then he's going to get his contract that was made public. But I feel like competition is needed for every position on this team, especially the quarterback position. You have McCown, who proved a lot last year as a 39-year-old, and Teddy Bridgewater is going to have something to prove after being off his injury. And I feel like you're never the same player after an injury like that. But I feel like it brings depth, and that's what the Jets need is depth. And there will be competition. Will Teddy Bridgewater get the starting job, or will it be Josh McCown? Again, it's something that will be interesting as the offseason comes to a close and we start to head into training camp.
Yeah, definitely. And before we move on to our mocks, like you said, let's just talk about two guys that the Jets are in contention for, and that's much needed wide receiver help in Terrell Pryor and or Allen Hurns. I saw Allen Hurns' meeting with the Jets today after the snowstorm caused that meeting to be canceled for yesterday. He met with the Cowboys. Obviously, they didn't come to an agreement there. He left the meeting with Jerry Jones and is coming to New York to meet with the Jets. Personally, I think that Allen Hurns is the better signing between the two. I'm just not that high on Terrell Pryor, especially after he did not have a great year last year. Got paid a ton of money in free agency from the Browns, and even with an above-average quarterback in Kirk Cousins, couldn't really get going in that offense. I think Allen Hurns would be a better signing for the Jets.
I agree. Allen Hurns, even though both guys haven't shown too much, Allen Hurns has shown more than Terrell Pryor. I mean, you got to think, Terrell Pryor used to be a quarterback in college at Ohio State. You got to take that with a grain of salt. You know, he was good that 1 year in Cleveland. Why he really left Cleveland, I have no idea. But Terrell Pryor, you know, you take a flyer on these guys. So it's not, you know, it doesn't hurt you, and it doesn't, you know, and it can help you if the signings are successful. But I would prefer Allen Hurns as well. But we'll see what happens. Again, depth is a huge, huge thing for this team.
Yeah, and maybe much needed was a little too extreme in what I said before, but the depth is, you didn't see much of Ardarius Stewart last year. You didn't see much of Chad Hansen last year. The Jets, who knows what's going on with Robbie Anderson and his legal troubles. Quincy Enunwa coming off that neck injury. No one knows what to expect from him. Jermaine Kearse is going to be a solid guy. He had a solid season last year. And in my opinion, someone that the Jets should even try and re-sign this offseason before getting into his contract year next year. Let's just touch on one last thing. It's also in the pass game. What do you think the Jets are going to do at tight end after Austin Seferian-Jenkins moved on and signed with the Jaguars?
It's a difficult thing because the Jets over the past couple of years, other than last year and the middle of the year before, weren't really huge in the tight end part. I mean, their offense, their West Coast system, for some reason, doesn't really involve a tight end over the past 2 years. But Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I think it's not a huge loss, but he did contribute a lot last year, and he's going to a very good Jacksonville team who's I feel like is gonna contend once again with that defense. I think the Jets might, you know, if they find somebody they like in free agency, maybe, even though it's not a deep free agent tight end class, it may be even somebody in the draft. I mean, if they feel like they really don't need a tight end, then maybe the guys that they already have, they feel like they can fill the void. I mean, they drafted Jordan Leggett last year, I think in the 4th round. He looks kind of similar in stature to Austin Seferian-Jenkins, but we have yet to see what he can turn out to be. I just want to point out some quick notes about other big free agency signings throughout the league. Le'Veon Bell, franchised by the Steelers, so he's going to stay in Pittsburgh. Also, DeMarcus Lawrence, franchised by the Dallas Cowboys. Drew Brees, re-signing with the Saints. Jimmy Garoppolo, restructuring a 3-year deal with the 49ers. Malcolm Butler, good to see him go, thank God. Signed to the Tennessee Titans. Morgan Burnett to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Pugh signs a 5-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals. Tyrann Mathieu signs a 1-year deal worth $7 million for the Arizona Cardinals.
That's definitely a guy I wanted the Jets to sign, Tyrann Mathieu.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Our secondary would have been absolutely nuts.
And still surprising, Ndamukong Suh, still unsigned after the Dolphins cut him. Still unsigned, but he is taking visits around the league. Jarvis Landry out at the Dolphins. He was franchised by the Dolphins and then traded to the Browns. And, of course, Allen Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Chicago Bears. Bears really needed a wide receiver, and now they have a number one guy. We touched on Trumaine Johnson, obviously, and other wide receiver, Sammy Watkins to the Kansas City Chiefs, Deion Lewis to the Titans, and Carlos Hyde to the Browns. So those are just some big ones. Oh, and of course for the Giants, I think this one is huge for the Giants, getting Nate Solder from New England. I think that's a really good one with a 4-year deal to solidify their offensive line. And Jimmy Graham from the Seahawks to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, just some really really big guys moving locker rooms, changing teams. Some other guys that the Jets signed that we didn't mention: Mo Claiborne signing back, Isaiah Crowell for some running back depth. So definitely a busy free agent period in the NFL. Some big name guys still out there. We mentioned Ndamukong Suh. So we're going to take another quick break here on the NSP Sports Podcast. When we come back, we will give you our mock draft 1.0. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned right here on YouTube to the NSP Sports Podcast. You're listening to the NSP Sports Podcast here on YouTube. And welcome back here to the NSP Sports Podcast here on YouTube. Just a reminder again, check out our social media pages. And if you want to see our mock drafts that we're about to give in black and white, you'll be able to check those out on Twitter after the show. All right. Pro days going on for some of the big-name quarterbacks. Sam Darnold, most recent to have his pro day. Rosen and Baker Mayfield had theirs a week or so ago. So let's go right into the mock draft. I'll start out here. Browns, number 1 overall. I just can't see them not taking Sam Darnold here in this situation. Quarterback from USC. His pro day just showed that he's the best quarterback available in the Browns, especially after trading away Deshaun Kaiser to the Packers in the offseason. That's just a no-brainer pick for me at 1 for the Browns, Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I agree. In my mock draft, I have Sam Darnold going 1 as well to Cleveland. I don't see the Browns taking anybody else because of the activity that's gone on below them. I think they're really forced to take the quarterback. I think they were going to really take him anyway. But Sam Darnold, he's the best quarterback prospect in this draft, I believe, and they're getting a franchise caliber quarterback finally. Maybe the Browns are building towards something good here.
All right, at 2, I have a trade going down. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to jump from 12 up to the 2nd overall pick from the Giants. The Giants are going to receive 12 and 22 back from the Buffalo Bills in this trade. So going to Buffalo, 2nd overall, I have Josh Allen, the quarterback from Wyoming. This guy is kind of a guy that some people are really high on, such as Boomer Esiason and Phil Simms or Chris Sims. They're really high on this guy, but the project of him, some people are saying it's a 2 to 3 year project. He has the arm, obviously. He can throw the ball about 90 yards down the field. But I think that the Bills are going to like this guy at 2. Whether he's going to turn out big or not is something that we'll have to find out. But at 2, I'm going to have Josh Allen, the quarterback from Wyoming, going to Buffalo.
Okay. I do not have a trade. I have the Giants selecting a player with the 2nd pick. But I don't believe it's who they think everybody thinks they're going to draft. With the number 2 overall pick, I have the Giants picking Bradley Chubb, defensive end out of NC State. Due to the recent trade that just went official a couple hours ago, the Giants traded Jason Pierre-Paul to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for, I think, 2 2018 picks. And I feel like the Giants are now making a move without having to trade up or anything like that. Do they need a quarterback for the near future? Yes, but I feel like the Giants are still in love with Eli Manning, and Bradley Chubb I believe, is a can't-miss defensive prospect in this draft. I don't see him dropping really at all, but Chubb has all the intangibles, and I feel like he can succeed with the Giants.
All right, number 3. the New York Jets, gangrene picking here in the trade that went on with the Colts a week ago. I'm not in love with this guy. I hope the Jets don't take him just because of the injury problems, but I just think the Jets are going to take Josh Rosen from UCLA. I would rather have the Jets pick Baker Mayfield here at 3, but I just don't think Mike McCagnon will like the shorter quarterback. A lot of people have said that. Brian Costello of WFAN, I've heard him say, and Michael Kay on ESPN Radio says that Mike McCagnon doesn't really like a smaller quarterback, and Josh Rosen might have the best talent of any quarterback in the draft here, and at 3. But the injury history definitely scares me, but I do think the Jets are going to take Rosen at 3.
I do too. Josh Rosen, quarterback of the UCLA. I mean, the Jets traded up with the Colts for a reason, and it wasn't to get Saquon Barkley. It wasn't to get a guard. It wasn't to get anything like that, but a quarterback. The Jets need a quarterback. They haven't found one since Joe Namath. Haven't had the franchise guy since then. Josh Rosen, yes, the injuries scare me as well, but Josh Rosen, I'm told, is the best pure passer in this draft this year. I feel like he's a guy you cannot pass up. Again, I do agree with you that I would like Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, I feel, has the energy to be in New York and doesn't take crap from anybody. But Josh Rosen, I feel, is the better prospect, and especially after going to his pro day, I think the Jets have made their decision and will take Josh Rosen, 3rd overall.
Moving on to 4, Cleveland Browns have another selection here. I think they're going to take Saquon Barkley from Penn State. That's just got to be a successful draft. He's the best guy maybe in the entire draft, skill set wise, no matter on position. Barkley at 4 for the Browns, I think, is a no-brainer pick here, especially at 4, where people could say he could go number 1. Barkley to the Browns is going to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer again. Just at that point, I think the Browns are taking the best player available, Saquon Barkley. They need offensive weapons. There's no doubt about it. I think Saquon Barkley is another one of those bell cow backs like Ezekiel Elliott that just keep on going. And he's a can't-miss guy. The Cleveland Browns would really Browns it up if they do not take Saquon Barkley with the 4th overall pick, if he's there.
Yeah, I could see the Browns maybe making a trade here too, maybe trading down a spot or 2. But I think Saquon there at 4 is a no-brainer for Cleveland. All right, let's move on to 5. This is an interesting pick, I think. I haven't seen this much, and it might be too high for this guy. But 5 at Denver, I'm going to go for Denzel Ward, the cornerback from Ohio State. They just lost Aqib Talib. He's not on the roster anymore. Their secondary's getting older. The so-called, or not the so-called, but they've had some great players there in the past. Aqib Talib, Chris Harris. So I think that Denzel Ward can fit right in that defense, taking over for Aqib Talib. So I'm going to go with Denzel Ward from Ohio State at 5.
We have a trade. With a 5th pick. Hope you heard that good. We have a trade in that 5th pick. The Broncos are going to move down. They're going to trade with the Buffalo Bills. This is where the Bills take their quarterback, Josh Allen, out of Wyoming. I only don't agree with that they trade up to 2 because I think it's just going to take a king's ransom for them to trade up to 2 after what it took the Jets to trade up to 3. So, I mean, Josh Allen, big arm. I think he's the guy for the Buffalo Bills. If they really want him, they'll go up and get him. He does have a couple comparisons, in my opinion, to Brock Osweiler just because of the size and the big arm. I hope for his sake that he's not like that. But again, he's a top quarterback prospect that's going to go in the top 10. And I feel like Buffalo really wants him, and he's going to be their guy. So Josh Allen at 5. Bills trade with the Broncos.
All right, 6 here for Indianapolis from the Jets as they traded down from 3. Bradley Chubb, defensive end, NC State. I think this is another case where you take the best guy available. Obviously, Indianapolis does have a need for an edge rusher there, but Bradley Chubb is probably the best guy available anyway, and if he fits a positional need for them, I think this is a no-brainer pick at 6 for Bradley Chubb to go to Indianapolis.
I did have Chubb going second to the Giants, so obviously he can't go there now. But with the 6th pick with the Colts, I think they take Quentin Nelson, guard out of Notre Dame. They need to solidify that offensive line to protect Andrew Luck. He's going to come back this year, not knowing how he's going to play. Indianapolis really hasn't spent money on the offensive line. I think this is where they start to build a good line around Andrew Luck. It all starts with Quentin Nelson out of Notre Dame.
All right, moving on to number 7 here, Buccaneers. Minka Fitzpatrick, defensive back from Alabama. Again, another case of best guy available. They do have some needs for secondary help here in Tampa, even though they did add Brent Grimes again, signing back to a 1-year deal. But they do have a need for safety, and Minka Fitzpatrick's a very versatile defensive back. Play safety, corner, can play up in the box as well. So I think him going to the Bucs is a smart pick there at 7.
I do have them taking a secondary player, but it's not Minka Fitzpatrick. I got Denzel Ward, cornerback out of Ohio State for the Buccaneers. His draft stock is rising at a very excellent rate because of the Ohio State has produced a lot of defensive backs over the couple years, especially Marshawn Lattimore from last year's draft. I think Denzel Ward would be a good fit with Tampa Bay to play there in the back end. I don't think the Buccaneers can pass him up, in my opinion, because they need cornerback help.
All right, moving on to 8 here at the Bears. I have them taking Quentin Nelson, the offensive lineman from Notre Dame. They do have a need for offensive line, especially with Josh Sitton departing. And they do have a need for corner as well, but with Denzel Ward and Minka Fitzpatrick already off the board, they're going to take an offensive lineman there, and Quentin Nelson, probably the best offensive lineman in the entire draft. So with him falling to 8, I'm going to have him going to Chicago.
We have back-to-back corners in my draft. I have the Bears selecting Minka Fitzpatrick at 8. Another team that just needs secondary help and really help all around. They need to build a solid team around Mitchell Trubisky, and you can't rely on him to score a lot of points. I think Minka Fitzpatrick, whether he plays safety or corner in Chicago, will be a versatile player and somebody that the Bears can really rely on in the near future. So I have Minka Fitzpatrick to 8.
All right, 9 for the 49ers. They have the defensive end out of UTSA, Marcus Davenport, going there at 9. The 49ers were 26th in the league in sacks last season, and obviously their offense is probably pretty set with Jimmy Garoppolo, as they showed in the latter end of last season where he won a lot of games for that team. I think defense is definitely a spot where the 49ers should attack here in the draft, and they're going to start off their draft by taking Marcus Davenport.
Okay, at 9, I have the 49ers taking the best wide receiver in this year's draft, and that's Calvin Ridley out of Alabama. I just think they need another weapon for Jimmy Garoppolo for really him to succeed. I think Calvin Ridley has number 1 wide receiver potential. Again, best wide receiver in the draft, and another weapon for Garoppolo for him to throw to and for him to succeed there in San Francisco.
All right, 10. The Raiders going to take Tremaine Edmonds, linebacker from Virginia Tech. They need some defensive work. Their offense is going to be a machine this year, especially with Gruden as their head coach, with guys like Amari Cooper, Marshawn re-signing with the team. Derek Carr, I think, is going to have a huge season this year. So to solidify that defense with Khalil Mack at the helm, I'm going to have them taking a linebacker, Tremaine Edmonds from Virginia Tech.
I have the same pick, Edmonds to Oakland. I'm sorry. soon to be Las Vegas Raiders. I think Edmonds, he's the best linebacker in this draft, no doubt. Just pairing him with Khalil Mack in that defense is scary to think about. And the Raiders want to get back to that Raider mentality, that tough, just win baby mentality. And I think if they add Tremaine Edmonds, they'll get one step closer.
All right, at 11, the Miami Dolphins, with the departure of Ndamukong Suh, I have them taking Vita Vea, defensive tackle from Washington. That's a huge hole for this team. Was their strong suit last year with guys like Cameron Wake and Ndamukong Suh there, obviously, as we just mentioned. He departed the team. But with that departure, they need to find depth in their defensive tackle position. And no better guy than probably the best defensive tackle prospect, Vita Vea from Washington.
At 11, I have the Dolphins taking Marcus Davenport, just basically because he's the best defensive player available. I thought in mind, that Ndamukong Suh is gone, but I feel like having Davenport and the guy they just traded for from the Rams, that was Robert Quinn. So just having having Robert Quinn and Marcus Davenport, a young kid, I think that'll make up for Ndamukong Suh not being there anymore. Davenport's just the best defensive player in my mock draft at the moment the Dolphins are picking.
All right, at 12, this is where I have the Giants selecting their first pick in the first round after the trade with the Bills as they moved up to 2. I have them taking Mike McGlinchey, offensive lineman for Notre Dame. There's no doubt that this team needs offensive line help even after the signing of Nate Solder. Eric Flowers hasn't turned out what people thought they'd be, especially where they drafted him. Maybe a position change is going to help him, but losing Weston Richburg, Justin Pugh also departing, McGlinchey is a good pick here for the Giants at 12.
So in my mock, I had Buffalo and Denver swapping picks. So Denver has the 12th pick, and this is where the Broncos get their guy. They trade down and still get their guy. They draft Baker Mayfield, quarterback out of Oklahoma. Even though they just signed Case Keenum, Case Keenum's not going to be there forever, and God only knows what he's going to be next year from coming off a spectacular year in Minnesota. I don't know if he can repeat that success that he had last year. I think Baker Mayfield's a good fit for Denver at 12. I think it's a guy that John Elway just would love to have. He's got fiery attitude. Although I would like the Jets to take him at 3, I got Mayfield at 12 to the Broncos.
All right, 13, Washington Redskins. I have them taking Roquan Smith, linebacker from Georgia. Linebacker, you can never have too many stout linebackers, and this is probably the best defensive guy that is available in the draft currently. A guy whose stock is also rising pretty fast. So I'm going to have Roquan Smith going to the Redskins at number 13.
All right, for my pick for the Redskins, I have them taking Deron Payne, defensive tackle out of Alabama. Again, they do need defensive help all around, in my opinion. They don't have, especially on the defensive front. I think Deron Payne is a good prospect and is a good fit for the Redskins.
All right, 14, Green Bay. I have them taking Derwin James, safety from Florida State. This would be a great guy to pair with Clinton Dix in that defensive backfield. They did take secondary help last year, Kevin King. But young secondary, we see it with the New York Jets, Jamal Adams, Marcus May. It can add a swagger to the team. And Jamal is one of the best leaders in that locker room. I'm not saying Derwin James is Jamal Adams, but a young secondary can definitely succeed in the NFL. So I think Derwin James is a good pick here at 14 for the Packers.
I got the Packers taking Cortland Sutton, wide receiver out of SMU. With the big loss of Jordy Nelson, I feel is going to affect them real bad. Cortland Sutton, the second best wide receiver in this draft. I feel like he'd be a good pairing with a guy like Devontae Adams over there in Green Bay. I feel like they'd really get a good duo there. So Sutton to the Packers at 14. All
right, 15, the Cardinals. I have our boy Baker Mayfield coming off the board here at 15. The Cardinals have always been a contender for a quarterback. Here at 15, Baker Mayfield was projected to go down there before his pro day, and the combine moved him up, especially with the trades and everything going down. But I think 15 for Baker Mayfield is a great spot for the Cardinals to pick, especially they can't pass up on him if he's down there at 15. Who knows what Sam Bradford's going to be, especially with his injury history, Carson Palmer retiring. They need a quarterback for the future. Baker Mayfield's their guy at 15.
Okay. For my pick at 15, the Cardinals are going to take Derwin James, safety out of Florida State. Since the loss of Tyrann Mathieu will affect the Cardinals this season, I think Derwin James is even a better prospect than Tyrann Mathieu at the time. Again, he's going to bring swagger, like you said, but he's going to bring it to Arizona.
All right, 16, I have my first wide receiver going off the board, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver from Alabama, to the Ravens at 16. Joe Flacco needs guys around him to succeed. There's a lot of arguments of whether he's an elite quarterback or not, but I think that adding the best wide receiver in this draft class to Baltimore is going to have a real big effect on his production and their ability to go to the playoffs next year.
The Ravens I have taking at 16 is the nose tackle out of Washington State. I think Vita is a great prospect. I'm not sure if he'll drop this low because he's such a good prospect, but I feel like he'd just be a good fit with the Ravens. I think the Ravens' defense is getting a little older, so I think they could use another guy to solidify that defensive line.
All right, 17 of the Chargers, I have Deron Payne, defensive tackle from Alabama. You just think of the Chargers' defensive front. You have Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, but they don't really have that guy to stick in the middle there to be a big run stuffer. And I think that Deron Payne can be that guy for them. He's going to clog up the middle and let Ingram and Bosa do their work on the outside.
17, I have the Chargers taking Roquan Smith here. I think he's a can't-miss prospect. I believe he will drop a little bit just because of the quarterback talent and the secondary talent that are in this draft. Unfortunately, he'll drop for me. I think he'd be a good fit with the Chargers. I feel that they really need that guy to stuff up the middle. And Roquan Smith has shown me that he can do that when he was with the Bulldogs. He's a good talent, and I feel like he has star potential in a city like LA.
All right, 18 to the Seattle Seahawks. I have Isaiah Wynn, offensive lineman from Georgia. Seahawks, their offensive line is just abysmal. I think the draft is a great place to start with rebuilding that line. You need to protect Russell Wilson. He can only do so much in the pocket and outside the pocket, escaping the rush. If they can get an offensive line behind Russell Wilson, I think they could be a Super Bowl team again. So offensive line is where the Seahawks are going to attack in my mock here.
Another talented player in this draft on the offensive line that's going to drop and right into the Seahawks. I think that he would be a great fit with Seattle. It's Mike McGlinchey, tackle out of Notre Dame. We both agree that the Seahawks need offensive line help. But again, Mike McGlinchey is another one of those players that's going to fall because of such quarterback talent. Such quarterback talent and other needs in the draft for the higher teams. I think McGlinchey is no doubt the best tackle in this draft, but unfortunately he's going to fall, and the Seahawks are going to love it.
Yeah, that would be really, really, really good for the Seahawks if he dropped 18. But moving on to 19 for the Cowboys, I have them taking Cortland Sutton, wide receiver from SMU. This offseason has brought around a lot of doubt about Dez Bryant and his future in Dallas. Getting a kid from a Texas school in SMU, bringing him to the Cowboys, I think would be a great fit. He's used to living there. Won't have any distractions around him. He'll just be all in on football. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver from SMU, to 19.
At 19, I got the Cowboys taking Rashaan Evans, linebacker at Alabama. Sean Lee's not going to be around forever, so I feel if they draft this guy, he can learn. I don't know if he'll play right away just because of just because of Sean Lee. But Rashaan Evans, he's that Alabama defensive players go real quick in drafts most of the time. I feel he's a good prospect, a good linebacker prospect. Not the best linebacker in this draft, but I think the Cowboys will take him.
All right, moving on to number 20, the Detroit Lions. I have them taking Harold Landry, defensive end from Boston College. They already had to franchise tag Ziggy Ansah once. Who knows what his future is going to be like in Detroit, especially with Matt Patricia coming to Detroit. I feel like if he has another explosive edge rusher, he could do a lot of things with that defense. Harold Landry, his stock is rising from Boston College, so I'm going to have him taking 20 to the Lions.
You're not going to see this in a lot of this year's mock drafts, I'll tell you that. I have my second running back being taken off the board in the first round. The Lions need a running back, and they need one bad. Amir Abdullah, Theo Riddick, those guys aren't getting it done there. So the Lions, with the 20th pick, are going to take Sony Michel, running back out of Georgia. I think behind Saquon Barkley, he's the best running back in this draft. We saw his performance over this past season in the Rose Bowl. He was fantastic against Oklahoma. He's a guy that can do it all. He can run downhill, run on the edges, catch the ball. He's a guy that can be a difference maker for the Detroit Lions, and I feel like Matthew Stafford especially will benefit from such a good back, an elusive back like Sony Michel. So I have Michel going 20th to the Lions.
All right, 21 to the Bengals. I have them taking Billy Price, offensive lineman from Ohio State. There's a lot of questions about this guy, especially after he tore his pectoral muscle at the Combine. They will say that he will be ready, though, for training camp for whichever team drafts him. I understand the Bengals already traded for Cordy Glenn to get this pick in the first round, but interior offensive line positions, if you can get a center for years to come in your franchise, especially a guy like Billy Price, whose stock is also rising. I've seen him being projected on the second round in some picks. But I think 21 is a great spot for Billy Price here to go to the Bengals.
I agree with the offensive line, but I feel like they're going to take James Daniels, center from Iowa. Again, it's just a need for the Bengals. They need to protect Andy Dalton. I think Daniels is a great prospect for the center position, but the best center will be taken off the board already. I think Daniels is a good step up for Cincinnati.
All right, 22. This is the Giants also got this pick from the Bills in their trade for the Bills to move up to 2. I'm going to have the Giants taking their QB of the future. There's a lot of people saying that Davis Webb, who knows what he is, but I'm going to have the Giants going Mason Rudolph, quarterback from Oklahoma State here at 22.
Wow.
I just think even though they're in win-now mode and Eli's going to be there for another year or two, you can never have enough quarterbacks in your franchise that could turn around a franchise. Especially we've seen it in the Jets. They haven't had a franchise quarterback in however many years. Mason Rudolph, 22 to the Giants.
I got the Giants taking Isaiah Wynn from Georgia. They need offensive line help. I know they just got Nate Solder, but you can never have enough offensive linemen to take over. So Giants get Wynn at 22.
All right, 23, the Rams. Loss of Alec Ogletree. I'm going to have them taking another linebacker, Leighton Vander Esch from Boise State. Interior linebacker. They're going to miss Alec Ogletree. That defense is kind of getting a facelift in Los Angeles. Leighton Vander Esch is a guy his stock hasn't risen yet, but I feel like he's going to be a first-round player. 23 to the Rams is where I have him going.
I got the Rams taking Sam Hubbard, defensive end out of Ohio State. Ohio State defensive players are just in high demand in this draft and drafts of the past. Hubbard's a great prospect. I know he's given a lot of teams, including my Michigan Wolverines, some problems over the past couple years. Sam Hubbard's a guy that I think will fit with the Rams. I think the Rams defense gets a lot better if they pick him.
All right, moving on to the Panthers at 24. Rashad Breeland, really weird situation going on there in Carolina with his failed physical. I think he has an infection in his foot or something like that. But I'm going to have them taking a corner, Josh Jackson out of Iowa. It's a guy that has been projected in the maybe even top 10 picks, stock dropping a little bit. I think it's a great pick down at 24. This might be a steal in the first round. Josh Jackson, 24.
I got the same pick. We agree on that one. Josh Jackson, I feel he did a lot. He did a lot for Iowa, for the Hawkeyes last year. He was really their cover corner. I think the Panthers it is gonna be a real steal if the Panthers get him at 24. He just got that mentality. He's got that. I feel like he best fit with the Panthers there at 24.
All right, 25 for the Titans. I have them taking Lorenzo Carter, linebacker from Georgia. This is a guy who can play a little bit of edge rush for them. Tennessee, a team that doesn't get many sacks, kind of struggle in the offensive or the defensive line position. It's a guy who can play a little bit of linebacker as well as edge rush in that Tennessee defense. I'm going to go Lorenzo Carter at 25 to the Titans.
I got the Titans picking offensive tackle. I got them picking Connor Williams out of Texas. This pick really is just a guy just to protect Marcus Mariota. They need to protect him for their franchise to survive. I mean, they gave up a lot, and to go get him, to go get Marcus Mariota. So just a guy to protect them.
All right, 26 Falcons. I have them taking your boy Maurice Hurst, defensive tackle from Michigan. I know he has a lot of question marks around him right now, just because of the whole heart condition that came about at the combine and his physical. But Falcons lost Dontari Poe in the offseason. So they're looking for a guy who can fill that hole for them. Maurice Hurst, maybe a top 10 prospect in this draft. If he's going to be medically cleared to go, that's going to be another steal at 26.
Hail to the victors. We agree on that pick. Maurice Hurst, I feel like, is a great pick for the Atlanta Falcons, especially because of who they lost on the defensive side of the football. I feel like he, again, another guy with that mentality and that heart. That he's just got a lot of heart. I watched him up close for all the year, watching the Wolverines. I feel he's a can't-miss prospect either, and another guy that's going to drop, and I think the Falcons are going to be very grateful that he did.
All right, 27, the New Orleans Saints. I have my first tight end coming off the board, Mike Gesicki, tight end out of Penn State. Probably the best tight end in the entire class, and what better person to learn under if you're a pass catcher than Drew Brees. They haven't really found a tight end that's been very consistent for them since Jimmy Graham moved on to Seattle. I think this is a great time for New Orleans to lock up that tight end position. Mike Gesicki, 27 of the Saints.
Unfortunately, Saints fans, Drew Brees isn't going to be around forever. I hate to say that. I love Drew Brees. But the 27th pick in this year's draft, the Saints are going to draft Lamar Jackson, quarterback of Louisville. Complicated circumstances for Lamar Jackson. People wanted him to try out as a wide receiver. Why? I don't know. But he stuck to his guns. He's going to play quarterback. He wants to play quarterback in this league. And what better guy to learn under than Drew Brees? I feel Lamar will gain great experience. And he doesn't have to play right away, so he's got no pressure. I know he is the fifth quarterback in most people's eyes. Can he be better than that? Absolutely. Can he be worse than that? Yes. He's got a lot of ups, a lot of downs for the NFL game. Electric in college. But I believe Lamar Jackson, give him a couple years. I don't think he'll be great, one of the all-time greats, but he can be a decent quarterback in this league. Lamar Jackson to the Saints at 27.
All right, 28. One of the worst stories of the NFL this year, Ryan Shazier of the Steelers going down with a neck injury. I have a guy that they can pick that can kind of fill his shoes for a while until he maybe makes a potential return. I've been taking Rashad Evans, linebacker, Alabama. I think you had another team picking him up in the draft. 28 is a great spot for Rashaan Evans here for the Steelers. Great defensive team. If Shazier comes back and then they have Evans to play alongside him or even back him up, that's a great 1-2 punch there for their linebacking core. I think that's a great pick for the Steelers at 28.
28 of the Steelers taking Ronnie Harrison, safety, out of Alabama. They definitely need safety help. They're very thin at the safety position. Again, like I said, Alabama players are huge. Defensive players are huge, usually every year in this draft. You can develop a guy like that. It's a low pick. It's 28 because of where the Steelers are. But they're going to get a quality safety and a guy they can develop with an already pretty good defense.
All right, 29, Jaguars. Allen Robinson departing there. Allen Hurns departing there. Need for a wide receiver. I'm going to have them taking Christian Kirk, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. A guy who can step right in. Definitely have a young wide receiver core there. D.D. Westbrook, Curlin Cole, or whatever his name is. The Cole kid from Jacksonville. He's going to step right in. He doesn't have to be the top guy. D.D. Westbrook is probably expected to be that. I know they took wide receiver last year in the first round in Westbrook, but wide receiver, give Blake Bortles another weapon to spread the ball out to.
Another pick we agree on, Christian Kirk. He's a talented. He had a very good combine from what I saw, and from what NFL people have been saying. I'm not sure he's. I actually think he's better than better than a guy like Courtland Sutton. I think he's got a lot of upside, and the Jags will be happy to get him, especially with the wide receiver need.
All right, 30 to the Vikings. I have them taking an offensive lineman in James Daniels. He's listed as a center. That was his main position in his last 2 seasons at Iowa, but he has the ability to move over to tackle or guard as well. Kirk Cousins is going to need protection, especially with guys like Joe Berger still out there for the Vikings. No, he might retire. There's question marks along that offensive line. James Daniels, versatile guy. He's going to be a good pick there for Minnesota.
I have Carlton Davis, cornerback out of Auburn, for the Minnesota Vikings. Really, Minnesota, the 30th pick. We're getting a little thin here in the draft this year, but I feel like, why not at this point?
All right, 31, Patriots. Losing Malcolm Butler this offseason, they have a need for cornerback. They're going to find that guy in Isaiah Oliver, corner out of Colorado. Malcolm Butler, even though I think he's a bit overrated, it's definitely going to be a huge loss for that defense. They need a guy who can step right in and fill that void there in the defense. In the secondary, Isaiah Oliver is going to be the guy that Bill Belichick looks to.
31 to New England. I don't like to give them any good picks, but, 31, the loss of Dion Lewis is big for New England. I think they're really going to miss that guy. Yes, they have James White, but they need another back. And I think a guy like Darius Geis, a guy that is underlooked in my opinion, he does have first-round talent. I think Geis would be a good fit in New England because he's a downhill runner. He can do, again, he's another back like Sony Michel. SEC backs are mostly similar for the most part, but Geis I feel like would be a good late first-round pick for New England.
All right, finishing out the first round, Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to have them taking Anthony Miller, wide receiver from Memphis. I feel like wide receiver is a position that they might need in Carson Wentz or Nick Foles, whoever's ready in the beginning of the year to spread the ball out to. Obviously, they're set at tight end. Just have another weapon on the outside for them to throw the ball to. Anthony Miller, guy here at 32 from Memphis that the Eagles are going to take.
Here at 32, I have the Eagles taking our first tight end, Mike Gesicki out of Penn State. Brent Selleck, the Eagles released Brent Selleck. I know they have Zach Ertz, but again, Gesicki's a very talented player, can learn some more. Maybe he'll play in two tight end sets for the Eagles. Really, as the Super Bowl champions, you really can't get any better. But I think the Eagles get a slight better with picking Gesicki at 32.
All right, and that rounds out the NSP Sports Podcast Mock Draft 1.0. Obviously, we agree on some picks. We disagree on a lot of them. But we have the same kind of guys going in the first round, just the different teams. Definitely going to be a lot more storylines to watch as draft day comes nearer. But with that, we're going to end off this episode here of the NSP Sports Podcast. Thank you all for tuning into the episode here on YouTube. Again, check out all our links in the description below. Check out our mocks if you want to see it in black and white over on our Twitter account at NSP Sports Pod. For Nick Federico, I'm Scott DeBell. Have a great day, everyone.
Good night, guys.